Welcome, everybody, to episode 304 of WordPress Weekly for Wednesday, February 7th, 2017. I'm your host, Jeff Chandler. Eventually, I'll be joined by J-Trip. He's a councilman. He's very important nowadays. He's on the phone. I'm sure it's a very important phone call. Maybe we'll find out about it a little later. But we do have an awesome guest with you. But before we get to all that, I want to announce that we have a new addition to the family. His name is Smokey, Yorkshire Terrier. And long-time listeners of the show will understand sort of the pain and difficulties associated with losing our previous dog. So it's been over a year, and this guy, we found him at Petland, and there you go. People watching the live stream right now will be able to check him out. He's a male, and just kind of fell in love with him, and he chose us, and we're really happy right now. And this is the first time I've sort of raised a dog from puppy status. So I'm enjoying not having any sleep and listen to him cry bloody murder when he's in the cage. But all in all, I got to realize that the puppy days, well, he's tired, but I got to realize that puppy days go pretty fast. So I got to find a way to enjoy them, which I'm doing. So it's really cool to have a new therapist in our life. And my wife's pretty happy. I'm pretty happy, and he seems to be yawning. So there you go. There's his name's Smokey, named after the Smoky Mountains, of course, my favorite area of the country. And hopefully within the next few years here, we'll take him down there. It'd be awesome to get some pictures with him in the mountains. So there you go. There's Smokey for you. On today's show, we got a lot to talk about, and our guest is Marc Benzakein. He's a father of two, foster of many. He's the operations manager for ServerPress LLC, a lover of humanity, despiser of the inhumane. He's like a superhero, this bio. And he also has this interesting quote, and he's a man of many quotes, by the way, and apparently he made this up, but he says, "Life is practice. Just do better." It's like a variation of Nike's ad or something to that effect. We'll have to talk to him about it. And the last time Marc was on the show was episode 247. This was back on September 8th, 2016. And in that show, we sort of learned how he got involved with WordPress, and we talked a lot about technology over the years. And in this episode, we're going to cover what's going on in desktop server, what's going on in his life, what he's been up to, and we'll talk a little bit about his journey to better health, which was one of the highlights for me at WordCamp US. And with that, Marc, thanks for being on the show. Welcome back.
All right, thanks for having me. And I suspect that John is really ordering a pizza and arguing over whether or not pineapple belongs on a pizza or not. So clearly it's going to be a long discussion.
So apparently, he's on a call with his parents' neighbor who is nice, but he says it's a weird thing. So I don't know what's going on there in that conversation. But Marc, glad to have you back on the show. And
thank you.
For starters, why don't you tell us what you've been up to? Because you're supposed to be up there in the, is it Wisconsin or Minneapolis area nowadays? I don't know where you're at, but you seem to be all over the country lately.
Well, I call Milwaukee home, but I've been, I think you tweeted out a few months ago that it was time to play Where's Waldo with me. And I've actually been out here in California doing work with my business partners, Greg and Steve. We're working hard and pushing to get the next version of Desktop Server out. And there's just a lot of things going on that made it so that I felt like there's something to be said about being face-to-face with your partners, and before it becomes the elephant in the room, Desktop Server 4.0 has kind of become our I don't know, our Moby Dick, I suppose. and so we're actually making tremendous progress right now. We've had 2 releases in the last month, and we'll probably have another one out in the next couple of weeks where it's about 95% Desktop Server 4.0 code. So then it's just a matter of putting a new wrapper on it and things like that. So we're making a ton of progress, but I've been stuck out here in the awful sunny Southern California while the rest of my family is having to shovel snow and deal with the cold. So yeah.
Sounds like you got the wrong end of the deal.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm hating it. I mean, to be honest, like it's 70 degrees today, or I think it's gonna be like 77 degrees today, and I don't know what to do with myself because it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So, you know, John can relate.
Now, speaking of desktop server, back in January, sort of a big release, desktop server 3.8.4.
Mhm.
And actually, this was one of the larger releases that has happened in a while. Contain quite a few new features, especially for your premium services and subscribers. Tell us a little bit about what went into that release.
Oh my goodness, I'd have to go back and reread everything that we put into it. It was actually, you would think that putting out what we called an incremental release would be, you know, kind of a no-brainer. But last year, 2017, was really rough because we got hit with a lot of things. First, of course, it started with, I'd say it started with Matt and his state of the word when he said, okay, we're going to start recommending PHP 7 to everybody. And I was listening to that, and I texted my whole, you know, everybody I work with. I'm like, holy crap, we're dead, you know.
We better get that 4.0 out now.
Well, we need to get a PHP 7 release out. So that became our order of the day, was like PHP 7 has to be a thing, because people are not going to hear recommended. They're going to see it and they're going to go, oh, it's required. And that's going to be the mentality that people have. And so I knew that that was going to be the impact that it had. And it would have been just fine if that was the only thing. But then we had just like the perfect storm of one outside world thing after the other hitting us. And so we were constantly having to come up with ways to compensate for that with either our developer plugins that Desktop Server now uses. Instead of everything being a change to the core, everything gets changed kind of in these developer plugins that we have to make it more configurable and whatnot. And things like operating systems suddenly not working properly, or, you know, more recently things like the dev domain, you know, a top level domain going to Google and Google saying, hey, by the way, we're going to start forcing, you know, SSL on all of this. And so it was just like, it really was, 2017 was a killer for us because it was one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. And we felt like we were in reactive mode rather than proactive mode, which is never where you want to be as a developer. And of course, everybody has to deal with that from time to time. But for us, it just seemed like it was one thing after the other. And of course, we have, you know, tens of thousands of customers that we have to support, both, you know, premium and limited versions. And, you know, we offer support to all of them. Of course, the premium support people get, you know, exactly that. But so all of a sudden, everything became kind of like trying to operate, doing open heart surgery on a patient that has to be walking and working at the same time, rather than just saying, hey, let's shut everything down and get this done. And of course, when things don't go right, when you're impacted by outside world things, your support goes up, and, you know, and then you don't know how long that support is going to stay at that peak. So you don't want to bring on new people and train them, because you don't want to tell them 2 weeks later, okay, support's dwindled down, so you're out of a job. Or you don't want to go through the training brain damage of training them, and by the time they get trained to actually be able to do what they do, you don't have a need for them, because we really do try to run lean while being able to service all our customers as quickly as and as well as possible. So sometimes it boils down to you got to write more documentation. Sometimes it boils down to you have to rewrite your plugin. Sometimes it boils down to you have to rewrite your core. And it really was a tough year. And finally, and Steve, by the way, who's our you know, he's the mastermind behind Desktop Server and always has been. Finally, Steve made several breakthroughs that allowed us to actually produce a core update and then another core update. And during our production meeting this morning, he said, we're going to be ready to to be beta testing the Windows version of the next core update within, you know, a few short days. And so while the front end of desktop server looks largely the same as it did a year ago, the back end has changed in about 1 million different ways. The code has been streamlined, and we've had to, you know, we've done a lot of things. But so 3.8.4 was a long time in coming. And then we had to come out with 3.8.5 because when you make a major update, even though it was just, you know, a one version update with the version number, there was a lot going on in the back end. But as always happens with something like this, you discover bugs, or customers discover bugs that all of our testing in the world didn't produce, and so then we had to.
You know, I think open source WordPress, open source project, the suite name WordPress, sort of knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, within the last 48 hours, exactly. Yeah, I you know, it's like, well, you know, when you have like 1 million eyes looking at it and they still miss something, I don't feel so bad, you know. So, and actually, it's 1 million pairs of eyes, so it's probably more like 2 million eyes looking at it, you know. So, and you know, so it's yeah, it's crazy, and I always, you know, when I get a little bit discouraged about things like that, I think about, I don't know, companies like Microsoft, and you know, every other you know, every other version of their software is a piece of crap, and then they have to put out a whole new one because the other one, and then they just disavow all knowledge of the previous version of Windows. You know, and so I don't feel so bad, you know, dealing with that. But the problem for us is, of course, we really, really want our software, when it goes out to the customer, we want it to just work. It's our whole focus is always on making a workflow for people that saves them time so that they can either have a better quality of life or bill customers more or do whatever they want with that time, but have more flexibility with that time. So every single time that we talk about any new feature or anything that we want to do with our software, the conversation always turns to, how is this going to impact the customer and their workflow? Is it going to make it better for them? Is it going to make it more complicated? Is, you know, what's it going to do for them? And that's what drives everything that we do. So when you spend a year where you don't get to ask that question because things are hitting you from left field and right field and every other field in between, you know, it was a struggle. And I have to say, you know, I've said it since starting to work with ServerPress, I have the best business partners on planet Earth, because we just all put our heads down and just, you know, plug forth at it as much as we can, and try not to get discouraged. And you know, and every once in a while we'll get that. We have customers also that are tremendously supportive of what we do, and they want to see us succeed, and so they're there and back us and help us, and they have patience. But I never, you know, our goal is really never to put that on the customer to have patience with us, and so we think about that all night. So all of a sudden now I feel like in the last month we've actually kind of gotten over that hump, and now that I've said it, I'm knocking on wood with, you know, all my appendages, because I feel like we've finally kind of gotten over that hump. We've found that, you know, this is a pro tip to all you developers out there who want to make a cross-platform product. We kind of came to a conclusion about a year ago. We really should develop for Windows first, because developing for the Mac is a lot easier. Developing for Windows has always been a challenge for us, and so and we've always had the philosophy of when we do a new release, we want it to be at the same time. We want to support our Windows customers as well as our Mac customers equally. If all we had to do was focus on Mac customers, we'd probably be at version 6.0 by now. But the reality is we've had to make a lot of changes and concessions and inventions for Windows to work and for Windows to just work. Once again,
are we talking about? I'm still running Windows 7. I love Windows 7, and until I buy a machine with Windows 10 on it, you're not prying me from Windows 7. But
sure.
desktop server, are you guys working with and developing on Windows 10?
Did you say Windows 10? That was the weirdest way to say Mac OS I ever heard, Jeff.
Well, yeah, right. But ladies and gentlemen, here's my co-host John.
It's John.
Into the show.
Hey,
just got off the phone with his weird parents' neighbor.
Everybody, let's welcome John to the show.
Hey,
John,
yes,
welcome to the show. Today's guest is John James Jacoby. You may know him from Buddy Press fame. And,
sorry, I'm late. But anyone who knows me knows that I'm running on my own clock, I guess. So here we are. Sorry, everyone.
It's okay. Apology accepted
for being late. I've been waiting for a call, but it was like 10 minutes before the show started, and then. It's there's stuff going on, and so I'm trying to make sure that everything's.
Get it. When you're trying to run the city of East Troy, I get it. It's a big cosmopolitan, entity in Wisconsin somewhere. I know it's like 45 minutes from where I live. I still don't know where it is.
It is its own. It's like Lost. You ever watch Lost, where there's the island that just keeps pervasive, and you get stuck in it forever, and you can't leave? That's
right.
How some people think of East Troy. Probably, I love it here for what it's worth. But,
Every once in a while, I'll be driving on a highway somewhere in Wisconsin, and I'll see a sign for East Troy, and I'll think, J-Trip lives there, and then I'm in Illinois or something, and I've totally forgotten it. So
there are lots of Gus's Drive-In that's here. They have a billboard on 43. Alpine Valley's got billboards all over the place. Okay. There's stuff here where people are trying to reach out. You're absolutely right. You'll see little billboards all over the place.
Yeah, and I know that you're really into the jazz festival there, and I think. Is it like a festival of 4? How many people?
Oh no, it's the Bluegrass Festival. They've been doing that for
Bluegrass Festival. There you go.
For like 35, 40 years. There people come from all around the world, and then the whole downtown Village Square Park is closed off and full of people. It's amazing. You should come.
I should come.
Now, John, get back on track, okay?
It's right. Sorry.
Let me reel you in, baby. All right, we got a whole hour here. So let's circle back around before John announced to the world he was here.
So tell everyone about your new Mac that you're going to buy.
I'm not buying a new Mac. No way. I'm thinking about buying a pre-built gaming machine with Windows 10 on it. Anyways, so we've been talking about the past year of desktop server and navigating through the minefield, so to speak, of what 2017 was. But 3.8.4 comes out, says you guys are currently beta testing 3.9, which will include full SSL support, PHP 7.x support. But one of the other things was, and as you alluded to, that the release, the code's a lot more versatile. So we should be seeing more releases into the future, and we're already kind of starting to see that with 3.8.5, which was released today or yesterday.
Well, we actually did the truth of the matter is we actually did a soft launch on Friday, but we didn't announce it because it was on a Friday. And we never, ever, ever want to do an announcement on Friday unless Greg wants to work all weekend, which he doesn't. So we officially announced it on Twitter and on social media yesterday. And then today the email blast went out and our web server got pounded really hard. So I was just watching the analytics. I'm like, okay, our server is going to crash any second now. And which is good. I mean, that's what you want. You want people to immediately flock to your site, no matter what time of the day it is. And you just hope that your site can take it. And it did. It handled it pretty well. And so the influx came fast, and it's still going on even now, but it's kind of tapered off and looking good. So and then
3.8.4 had, so you got Windows speed optimizations, a Windows compatibility plugin, updated the admin color bar. But, it's kind of interesting to me, some of the small things that people really show their appreciation for. And I saw this on Twitter where those with Retina, Mac, or high DPI Windows screens now enjoy an improved user interface in 384, and quite a few people are now like, wow, this looks really nice on my super high-res display now.
Yeah, I have to admit, that was probably the biggest shock to me, was that people made such a big deal about the high-res. Now, probably the reason that that's a big shock to me is because I am at an age where everything's blurry all the time anyway. So I don't care how high-res it is, it still looks blurry to me. And so... so it was not even, for me, it was not even really that much of a consideration. I just, when we wrote the changelog, it's like, this was part of, the update. And you're right. That was probably the #1 thing that people appreciated was, I can't believe how much better it looks. And okay, well, so that's the other thing, is sometimes you think you really know your customers, and we stay in touch with our customers all the time. We're very hands-on, and we're personally involved with our customers and everything. And even then, we still sometimes don't know what the big deal is going to be to them.
Well, Windows finally has decent support for high DPI.
It does. Right? It does. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It would have been really difficult to have adopted that a year ago because everything was just moving around so much. So why put the effort towards it?
Right. Well, yeah. And that's definitely true. And one of the things that, I don't know if you were on yet, John, or not, but one of the things I was saying is we always try to release both platforms at the same time.
Right.
And so sometimes that makes it difficult because sometimes one platform may be a little bit behind the other. As a general rule, Windows is behind or more complicated from a development standpoint than Mac. What was really interesting for us was that the bugs that came out that we just fixed in 3.8.5, the bugs in 3.8.4 were all Mac bugs. And I was like, and I was saying to my business partners, I said, this is hilarious. For the first time ever, Windows is the most stable, when we were beta testing it and going through that brain damage. So that was a first. But as a general rule, it's things like, it's those details though. It's those details that people like, and we focus, like all developers do, on just putting out a product that just works. But you don't sometimes you don't know what's going to strike a customer's fancy until they tell you, and it's out.
The high res Retina stuff is like, it's really apparent because it's the thing you see like instantly.
Yeah.
And so it is the thing that people are going to go, oh, finally that's done. Like, if it was crashing every day, they'd want a different thing fixed. But when it's stable and it works well,
I suppose. That's a good point. That's a good point. I'll let you have that one.
So that's kind of an overview of what's been going on with Desktop Server and what we can look forward to in the future. When I had you back on in September of 2016, I believe it was brand new, but there was this thing called WP Site Sync.
Right.
And it was sort of Desktop Server's way of diversifying its products, getting into the product space with a plugin. WP Site Sync made it really easy to sync content or piece of content from one site to the other. Can you sort of give us an update on and sort of the things that have been going on? I noticed that just in January there's an update release for WP Site Sync.
Right, yeah. So we just released a new update. Dave Jesh is the lead developer on that. If you guys know Dave, I've never seen prettier code in my life. Not that I'm a code expert, but when you see something beautiful, you just know it. That's Dave's code. So
that's how I felt about Jeff when I first met him.
What, that his code was beautiful?
No, that he's just a beautiful man.
He is a beautiful man. He is, yeah. And he's getting more beautiful with age.
Yeah, he is true. And he looks cuter now with the new
fine wine.
Like cuter now and happier and smilier now that they have a new puppy.
That's right. Awkward, John.
Yeah. But then he opens his mouth. But then he opens his mouth and it all.
You derailed the show once again.
Someone has to. Between us three knuckleheads, it's bound to be me.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know about that. So,
I feel like I need to shave my head. I need a haircut to qualify for this episode. I have too much hair.
well, so what you need to do, John, is lose a bet.
Well, okay.
You know, and then decide that you like it. And I did it about this time of the year, by the way. So there's
the
something.
Worst time of the year to have no hair on your head.
You would think, but the thing is, the minute I walked out and I felt like that crisp air hitting my head, I thought this feels really good.
And then everyone else thought, look at that man's head steaming and glistening in the negative 10-degree Wisconsin temperature.
Well, it's nice that you think that other people think of me at all, but but anyway, so back to WP Sightseeing.
I mean, really, I just want to know the evolution of the product and what the progress has been on. This was a new direction, sort of for observers.
Well, it's a new direction, and it's not. We're focused on workflow tools, and WP Sightseeing certainly is that. I can tell you that every time I would do a presentation, or Greg or Steve would do a presentation, the first question people would ask is, "Okay, great, you've migrated your site. Now, what happens when you change content on your local site or on your staging site? How do you synchronize that?" And so while that's always been we always refer to that as like the holy grail of whoever discovers a solution for that has discovered the holy grail kind of thing. And so it's really not that much. You'd be surprised. It's not that much of a different direction for us. And what was funny was that that's how we got hooked up with Dave Jesh. We've known Dave for a very long time, and Greg was at a meetup in Orange County. I think it was Steve Zinget's meetup, and Greg was doing a presentation about something, and somebody asked that very question, and so afterwards, Dave kind of came up to Greg and says, "Hey, I've been working on something. Are you interested?" And so Dave's been a friend of ours for a long time, and we got to talking, and we discovered that the timing was right to kind of take it on as a project if Dave came along with the project. And so he did, and he's been working really hard. With the latest version, he streamlined a lot of the code, and now he's working on all the additional extensions. His biggest one that he's been working on in the last couple of weeks, he's been working really closely with the guys at Beaver Builder. We've had a beta version of the Beaver Builder sync extension for a while, and we're wrapping that up, and that'll be done very shortly. Then he's going to be hitting WooCommerce. We're working with Kyle. You may know about this, John. I don't know, but we've been working a little bit with Kyle over at EDD. We just Dave just sent over last night for us to review a technical spec on it, which will be going out. So we're moving really fast now on WP SiteSync as well. We have an advanced customs fields one and all these other things. So you can synchronize the content that you want to synchronize between 2 or 3 or 4 sites really quickly and easily. And that's what Dave's been doing, and it's really clean, and it works really. It's really sweet, actually. I just, when I'm bored and I don't have anything to do, I'll just synchronize content between 2 sites just because it's like, hey, this is cool. But, so I'll create my local site, and then I'll synchronize content between 2 local sites, and then I'll delete the sites for no reason whatsoever. Because I have spare time. So
well, this is one of those things that hosting companies have been trying to do, or like encapsulating within their own dashboards or services for a really long time. Not even just WordPress, but any MySQL, anything is
right.
You want to put this over there, you want to put that over here, you want this to work that way, and you want that to work this way.
Right.
And so it's technically itself isn't a huge challenge to do anymore, but the nuances, all the little bits, make it hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I can tell you, if every single plugin out there, like say WooCommerce or Beaver Builder or Advanced Custom Fields, if they all wrote the exact same tables to the database in the exact same way, it would be a no-brainer. But the problem is that everybody has their own way of writing their tables, and and it turns into it turns into quite a challenge. And so it's no wonder that it's been that thing that everybody's talked about thinking would be really cool, but nobody's wanted to touch with a 10-foot pole. But we're either stupid enough to do it, or we have the genius behind it that actually figure out a way to do it. So,
well, that's the thing that WordPress is criticized for probably more often than other pieces of software that have a similar following are, is just the database abstraction layer of WordPress is just very, very old school feeling. Like the DB Delta function's cool, but it's kind of been broken forever. And just one function to create a bunch of databases is like the way that you built a PHP application 15 years ago. There's no ORM. There's no reliable built-in core way to create a new database table, update tables, query for stuff. Other pieces of software, Django to Drupal and on, have a standardized way of doing that. And so for WordPress, it means we're forced to invent and reinvent all these things. Because there just is no standard way for everybody to do it the exact same way. I'm kind of trying to half solve that problem. Not an easy problem to solve.
Yeah. And by the way, out of everything you just said, the only thing I understood was constantly invent and reinvent. That was all I understood. So the rest of it Dave would understand, but yeah.
So I mentioned in your bio that you're a father of two and you're a foster of many, and one of the projects you had going on a few years ago that we didn't get a chance to talk much about was there was a campaign going on to redo the attic in your home to house more foster kids. And so is the attic finished, or are the foster kids living with you there at the home in the attic?
Yeah, sure. The attic is finished.
I moved in last year.
Yeah, that's Well, John may live there and I wouldn't know it. The attic was as finished as it was going to be, because we ended up having to fire that contractor again too. So it was pretty much done. There were things like some trim and detail work that didn't get done, and then we ended up last year hiring another carpenter to come and finish that up. But that's been a source of frustration, is trying to find good contractors in, I would say, in the Milwaukee area, but the reality is I think that that's true anywhere. It's and so yes, there are 4 bedrooms and 2 baths on the attic level. There are now 9 children in the house, ranging from 16 years old all the way down to 2.5.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like a slumber party in the house every single night. And I am grateful because I have been on the road so much and I've been traveling so much. I am super, super grateful for things like Skype and Hangouts and whatever else. No two of the kids use exactly the same software to call me. So it's like Facebook has, Facebook Messenger, and my daughter, who is the most consistent one to call me, she'll call me almost every single day. She's gonna be 8 next month, and she was calling me on Snapchat, and I was like, I don't want you to call on Snapchat because she'll send me messages and things like that, and those disappear, and it's like, I want to keep those messages. So I ended up doing about a 1.5-hour technical support call with my daughter last week to get Skype set up on her phone and on her tablet and on her computer so that she can call me. So when she sends me the little emojis and the I love you mores and all that stuff that I get, I want to keep that crap, right? Because when I'm not working, I have to admit I get a little bit lonely for the kids, and so it's kind of like nice to have that to at least they still love me kind of thing. So,
So you're the one that has every single application.
I am that guy. Yeah. And I can tell you that there are some that have a UX that I can't stand, Snapchat. And others that they're not so bad, and then others that the UX is good, or the user interface is good, but the quality is crap, and but I was thinking, when I was a kid, my dad traveled a lot too. He was a teacher. He was a foreign languages professor. A lot of the times during the summer, he would take his students on trips to Europe. And he'd be gone for 2 or 3 months, or sometimes we'd go visit my grandparents in Wisconsin when we were in California, living in California, and we'd be gone, for several weeks. And I actually was talking to my dad the other day. I said, how did you deal with, not being able to talk to us at all? Because back then it was long distance. So if we talked to if we talked to my dad, it would be for 10 minutes, and it would be like, hi, and everything would echo, and it would sound terrible. They'd sound like they were on a submarine. And, my mom would be standing there, like watching her watch, going long distance, long distance, long distance, So, and that was just phone. That was just voice. And now at least we have the ability to see each other and goof off and talk and things like that. But it's still not the same as being there. It's so that's been a struggle for sure.
So that's a little bit about what's going on in your personal life. So back at WordCamp US 2017, one of the sessions that was the highlight for me was yours. And in fact, when I got to see you in person, the first thing I thought of was, that's not Marc. Marc doesn't act that way. God, it's been so long since I've seen Marc. Is that Marc? And it really was you. And you did a presentation on sort of your journey to better health, and it has struck a chord with me, and it struck a chord with a lot of other people. And we've seen Corey Miller now he's on the road to better health with jogging, physical activity. There's activity groups like bench press. Michelle Schulp is taking the fitness world by storm with what she's doing.
Right.
So I wanted something that maybe a lot of our listeners out there, they work remotely, they work from home, they sit a lot, during the day, maybe physical activity, they think they don't have time for it or whatnot. Let's start with your aha moment. Tell us about your aha moment where you said, okay, from this point on, I'm going to do what it takes to make sure that I'm there for my kids and I live past 50.
Yeah. So my aha moment was it was kind of a combination of two things. My first aha moment was I had turned 49, and I've always been one of those, your age is just a number kind of people. I don't care if I'm 90 or if I'm 30 or whatever. I mean, honestly, when I turned 32, I thought I was turning 33, and then when I realized I was turning 32, I felt like I got a year of my life back. I mean, it was that was probably my favorite birthday ever. But I've never been that guy. But when I turned 49, something hit me, that all of a sudden 50 was looming, and so I decided in July of 2016, when I turned 49, that I wanted to run a marathon on my 50th birthday. I was like, what's one thing that I really wouldn't want to do that sounds just unappealing to me when I turn 50? It was running a marathon. And I thought, well, okay, I've never done that. That's what I'm going to work towards. And so that was my first aha moment. And then I did absolutely nothing about it. And then round about October of that same year.
I like that you admitted that, because it proves to me that you are human.
Oh,
I had assumed that your ambition and motivation and unending pursuit of health and happiness was just programmed into you.
No, I am so I am so not that guy. I am so let me tell you, I cannot tell you how much I despise working out on a daily basis. I cannot tell you how much I despise eating healthy on a daily basis. I cannot tell you, like, I went vegan like 5 months ago, and I smell a steak and I still want that thing like nobody's business, you know? So I am not, you know, I'm the guy who walks into a bar and tells you I'm a vegan because I have to, not because I'm excited about being a vegan, right?
Yeah, right.
So, so anyway, October comes around and some wild hair got into me to step on the scale, which was like this apparatus that sat in the bathroom that I avoided like the plague most of the time. And I stepped on the scale and I weighed 235 pounds, which to me was the heaviest I had ever been in my life. To be, you know, 5'10", I always thought to myself, well, I'm about 220, I can live with being 220. And then all of a sudden I step on the scale and I'm 235 pounds. And that was really my aha moment. I'm like, so maybe there's no such thing as peaking at a certain weight. Maybe it does, you know, maybe you really do grow with age and it's not in the right way. And so that was my big aha moment, because I realized that I was, you know, really on this path towards being pre-diabetic, on this path of you know, just joint pain and all these other things that I had kind of learned to live with. Pre-diabetic, I wasn't pre-diabetic. I had gone to the doctor, but you know, doctors are kind of interesting, because I would go in and I probably went to 3 different doctors for 3 different things. One was for migraines, which I've talked about before, and all of them said, yeah, you're overweight, you know, and you're, you know, technically on the low end of obesity, but so is the rest of America. So somehow or another that makes it okay, right? Well, everybody else is doing it, so, you know, so you can do it too. And I, to be honest, I kind of bought into that. I was like, well, if my doctor thinks that I'm going to live, and he's like, look, your blood work looks okay, your cholesterol's a little bit high, but your blood pressure's fine, everything else is fine, so you don't really have anything to worry about. And I don't know, I stepped on the scale, I kind of freaked out about my weight, and I actually, for the first time in I don't know how long, took a good hard look at myself in the mirror and said, look, in my 20s, and especially my 20s and before, I was super active. I didn't sit on my butt all day. You know, I loved like playing sports and running around and doing all these things that I just kind of don't ever feel like doing now, because I just don't have the energy to do it. And I always struck it, you know, I would always strike it up to, well, of course there's the kids, and 3 stories, 3 flights of stairs to go anywhere. That's plenty of exercise, you know, and you kind of like justify all this, you know, crap in your head, which is total crap. And, and you really start thinking that, well, you know, maybe I'm the exception to the rule. Yeah, I'm overweight, but I don't have any problem with my blood work. Well, no, it really is still a ticking time bomb eventually. And that moment was really my aha moment. So I went down to my club and I went and I talked to them. I said, I want to run a marathon when I'm 50. And the guy at the club says, okay, I'm going to get you in touch with one of our trainers. I sat down with my trainer, and you know, who's become a really good friend of mine, and he said, okay, he says, I'll come up with a plan for you to be able to run a marathon when you're 50. And so I started working out 2 days a week, and then I upped it to 3 days a week. Then I started watching my diet a little bit, you know, and I just made small, very incremental steps, rather than these things that have always failed in the past, which is sweeping life changes overnight, you know, which is not sustainable, but gets you results right away, which is what people want to see. But that's really discouraging too, because you get these immediate results and then they taper off and you're like, oh, so I'm done, right? And you're never, the reality is you're never done. So for me, and I'm not saying that works this way for everybody, but I think the average person is not able to make those sweeping changes overnight and sustain it when they have the rest of their lives to also deal with. So for me, it really was about incremental, one little thing at a time. And you know, Jeff, you brought up that just do better. I said that in my presentation. I've always been kind of like, that whole just do it mentality has always bothered me. You know, Nike's just do it, just do it, just do it. Look, we all have a learning curve for everything. You can't just wake up and just do it, right? Mm-hmm. You have to do better. Everything about learning and everything about applying yourself is just doing better every single mm-hmm. day. Looking at what you did yesterday and saying, okay, how can I do that better? When you make a mistake, how can I do it better? How can I do it better? And so I was like, just do it sucks. Just do better. That's all I care about, because life mm-hmm. is all about practice. Life is never about actually arriving. And so then I got this different mentality about, you know, my goal mindset. I don't really I set goals, but I don't focus on them. I focus on the process. And, mm-hmm. you know, and so, but this has all been this thing. And now my focus is on sleeping more, you know, mm-hmm. getting more sleep, because I'm a typical person who grew up in the technology age where our quiet time is midnight till 3 in the morning. But mm-hmm. then, right. you know, but then I would still have to be up at 6 or 6:30 to deal with
Here's a tip for you. Don't get a puppy.
Yeah.
If you want to sleep more.
Well, well, the problem is that all those years of having done that, because back when I was in high school, I had a Commodore 64 and a VIC-20 before that. And I was always, so we're talking about 30 or 40 years, well, 30 plus years of bad habits when right. it comes to sleeping. And, my dad and my mom would say you need to be in bed by a certain time. But of course, those computers were pretty portable, and you had them hooked up to your little black and white TV or whatever in your room. And after I knew everyone was in bed, I'd be like up tinkering on my computer. And so my sleep habits have been terrible my whole life. And so it's easy to say, yes, I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock every night and I'm going to sleep until 6 in the morning. But the reality is I go to bed at 10 o'clock at night and I toss and turn until 1 or 2 in the morning. And then I finally fall asleep, and then I wake up at 6 or whatever. And I'm tired.
You feel like crap all day.
Yeah, you feel like crap. And I've always professed, look, I'm one of those guys that I can survive on 4 hours of sleep a night, which is true. But then by Friday I hit a wall. Mm-hmm. And I'm not very productive, and that's certainly not healthy. So the little incremental change that I'm working on right now is my sleep habits need to be better. I need to get better, deeper sleep, and I need to figure out which techniques work the best for getting me to sleep when I need to go to sleep.
So how did you actually, like, aside from just sheer willpower, you traveled? I mean, I used to run into you at the airport, going to word camps and events.
Right.
And so with the amount of travel, and when you travel, I mean, I don't know about you, but I eat like crap when I travel, because you have to eat what is by you. You with the fostering that you do, you have to make time to work out, and that time takes you away from other things that you love. And so for some people, that's children and family. For some people, it's dogs. For some people, it's work, for whatever. And so how did you change the day-to-day habit? If you were like the rest of us, if you had 30 years worth of bad habits, what was your personal process of transitioning from bad habits to good habits?
Well, okay, so fortunately, the kids during the day are either in daycare or they're at school. Mm-hmm. And this was in October, so it was during the school year. So I had always had a discipline of kids get to school, I sit in front of my computer by 8:30 in the morning, and I work until 3, then I go pick up the kids, and Jessica would go pick up the rest of, it was a divide and conquer thing. Mm-hmm. And then there's also this thing called a nanny. Everyone should get one. And so that part wasn't the hard part. The real hard part for me was realizing that it was going to cut into my work schedule, because my discipline was I need to be in front of my computer, and I need this number of hours. But looking back at it, I realized that I wasn't doing anybody any favors just being in front of my computer, because being out of shape and you know, I wasn't mentally firing on all cylinders necessarily. So it became, I dropped the kids off at school, I go straight to the gym. I would have my workout, then I would get back home and I'd get to work. Then the struggle became, what do I do when I travel? Because exactly what you said, the minute I would travel, all bets were off. You know, I would make sure that the hotel I was staying at had a gym, but I wouldn't use it.
Yeah, right.
I would make sure that the menu wherever I ate had healthy options, but I'd order the other stuff. And so it was about, I don't know, April or May of last year that I came up with this idea that I was going to start video workout sessions with my trainer. So he would Skype in or whatever, and I'd set the phone up, and just having that accountability of, hey, I'm paying my trainer X number of dollars per hour, that kind of motivates you to actually go to the gym and work out. So that started working out for me. But the eating healthy part, was my next struggle, because you know how it is at WordCamps, especially. Everybody wants to go somewhere, and it's usually somewhere not good. And you look at other people's plates, and you're like, "Ooh, that looks really good. Maybe I'll have that." And you know, I'm a big cheesecake guy, and anywhere that has cheesecake, I just will like. It's like, you know, crack to me. So it's not just bring me a slice of cheesecake; it's bring me the cheesecake. So.
Oh, you and Jeff could go to the Cheesecake Factory. It's an entire factory where cheesecakes are. No, okay.
No, that is a really bad idea. So, so what I started doing with that was, I have a very good friend who, she is a nurse practitioner, and she's been vegan, and she's actually been the one who really talked me into going vegan. And she's like, "Look, you've plateaued on your weight a little bit." She's like, "The best way to do that is to cut out dairy, to, you know, in order to continue getting towards that weight goal that you have, the best thing to do is to cut out dairy. And by the way, if you cut out meat, that's probably good too. But you still need to get your protein other ways and all that." And I was like, I'll never be vegan. Vegan. Yeah. I call vegan joyless eating. You know, it's joyless eating. And it's like, I don't know. It's like having Soylent for every meal, right? Yeah, right. And Soylent may be better. So that was my attitude. And so I started being flexi vegan, you know, and I, you know, my comment was, I'm vegan in between meals. So that's really like 23 hours out of the day, I'm vegan. So, you know, I cheat 1 hour out of the day. What's the problem? But but turns out it's a problem. So I started with the vegan thing, and it was quite a struggle for me to be on the road and trying to do vegan. So what I would do is I would snap pictures of the menu, and I would send them to her, and I'd say, "Look, what can I order off this thing? Because it all looks like crap to me." And she'd come back with, "Oh no, there's all kinds of good things there. You can take this from this order, and you can take this, and you can ask them to mix this, 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 and this, and you know, and you need this." And before you know it, I would have like a fairly substantial vegan order that didn't make me feel totally saturated by the time I was done eating, which meat does. You know, it still tastes good going down, but and all of a sudden I started losing weight again. And the only thing that I have to pay attention to is my protein intake. Now, I will tell you, I still struggle. I struggle. I still, like I said, a steak still smells like delicious to me. But I'm doing a lot better with the vegan eating, and I'm to the point where now I can feel satisfied by eating a salad, which I never could before. And by the way, vegan eating is not all salad. So, you know, which is always fun when you go to a restaurant. You say, "What vegan options?" "Well, we have salad." Well, do I look like a rabbit? You know.
So I know with your, maybe I missed it in the beginning of the conversation, but we have had some in-depth conversations about migraines and headaches.
Yeah.
And even talking about cutting out dairy and all the weird types of adverse effects that you might have, caffeine. And so now that you're on a relatively stable diet, it sounds like, and you've talked about joint pain, what are all of the, I mean, you live in Wisconsin. I mean, we're surrounded by dairy and cheese and beer and milk is everywhere and everything all the time.
And I love cheese. I don't care what kind of cheese it is. I love cheese. I mean, if they took everything else off this planet and just left cheese, I would be okay with that. That's how I am with cheese. So.
And so Carrie and I have started doing keto dinners a few times a week to like transition ourselves into it. And I don't know that it's enough for me to feel any different. I still drink coffee, still have caffeine, all the things. But what are the ancillary benefits aside from just like general feeling better, right? Like in your journey at this point, what are the things that either like surprise you or that got the results you were hoping for, or like what are these weird little things that are hard to pinpoint until you're like, oh, my back doesn't hurt anymore? Like,
so I've had several. First, I'm going to start with the one bad thing that I had to overcome, which was once I started losing the weight specifically, I found myself with boundless energy. So sitting in front of the computer for more than 30 or 45 minutes at a time and focusing on anything became very difficult for me. I was like squirrel. I mean, I'm bad enough as it is, but I honestly was, I think I finally got a handle on that just by kind of retraining myself over time and getting used to that. So that was the negative thing. The positives are I've always had kind of arthritic knees. Every once in a while, the arthritis, it's not like it was constant, but the arthritis would just flare up. And I've had this since I was a second grader, skinny kid. I have had a few times in the last year and a half where my knees, I could tell that they were starting to hurt a little bit, but then it went away like the next day. It was never to the point where it was crippling, where I did have that before. Lower back pain is virtually gone. I can't remember the last time I had a lower backache, which I used to have all the time. And I just kind of accepted it as that's the way that my life is going to be. I'm just going to always have lower back pain. I'm just going to have to deal with it. And of course, dealing with that pain, even if you're used to that pain, it's still energy that your body is putting towards something. And so when your body doesn't have to, and your brain doesn't have to put any energy towards those pains, you find yourself also with more energy, and you find yourself more able, like your brain starts firing on more cylinders, and you just feel better about things and more positive. And you brought up the migraines. I do still get migraines from time to time. I am to the point, I think one time you and I talked and I said I've cut coffee out entirely. I drink about 1 cup a day of coffee.
Yep, me too.
And I seem to do okay. But like last week I had a migraine, and it was because it was one of those days where I just carved out like crazy for, 2 days. I carved out. I had pizza. I had, chips. I had all these, I had Mexican food. Michelle Schulp was out this way, and so she and I went and had lunch, and and we both kind of carved out, but I think I carved out way more than her by a long shot. And the next day I paid the price by having a migraine. So as awful as that is, where my migraines used to last 2 or 3 days, my body now metabolizes things faster and goes through things faster. So even though that migraine hit me like in the middle of the afternoon the next day, because I usually run about a 32-hour delay before I get a migraine. So it's like just over a day. I have to always look at what did I eat yesterday or what did I eat 2 days ago in order to be able to determine what triggered the migraine. Because as you know, as someone who has journaled what you're eating, to see what kind of migraines, what's causing migraine, I do the same thing. So I would go back and I'd look a day and a half to 2 days ago. And so it hit me in the middle of the afternoon. But by the time I went to bed that night, without taking any Imitrex or anything like that, which always works to get rid of my migraines, it had started to go. I could feel it subsiding on its own. So my body goes through the process much quicker than it used to before I lost all the weight.
And so before you lost weight, you still had migraines, you still had back pain, you still had arthritic knees. Did you just power through it? You were just like, I have to.
I powered through it. Yeah, I powered through it. Except the migraines. I did not power through the migraines. Yeah. The migraines, I wrote a post about it. I was taking some blood pressure medication for my migraines, which actually did make the migraines go away, but it also caused me to get extremely depressed.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't discover that until, I don't know, April of last year that was. So I quit taking the propranolol for my blood pressure. And I didn't have high blood pressure, but it's one of the first treatments that they hit you with. And one of the side effects is depression, which
right.
One of the side effects of every drug on planet Earth is depression. But
right.
So that was kind of my progress. So yeah, but the back pain and the knee pain, I just powered through. I just was like, I need to do this. I need to get through it. When I talked to my trainer, if my knee was hurting, he would take it a little bit easier on me. He'd say, okay, today we're going to work out your chest and your arms, or, we're going to do this. But, he'd take it a little bit easier on my legs.
It's always fascinating to me how we're kind of pre-programmed to power through emotional pain or the stress of work or everything but the physical. The physical, you have to convince yourself every day to get up and run and lift a weight and go to the gym. And you really have to convince yourself. But if you're unhappy, you could sit alone in front of a computer and be unhappy for a really long time and kind of just power through the unhappiness for some artificial goal, pushing out software, releasing a thing. You could go, okay, it's only 6 months. It's only a year. It's only a small period of time. But that day to day, the knees, the back, the headaches, they seem like bigger barriers, I think, or more obvious ones.
I think it's because one is a physical manifestation that you can see. It's a tangible. You can put your finger on it and say, knee pain, head pain. Now, I will tell you, I've talked to many people that, and I'm sure you've done the same too, John, where you say, I have a migraine, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I get headaches sometimes too. I just power through it. You don't get migraines then, right? It's like, it's like you don't even know, because a migraine pain is honestly, I've had kidney stones, and I would rather have kidney stones over migraine pain.
Yeah, right.
And that's the thing, is that you get that, but if people can't see it, and we live in a society where people are just now starting to realize, hey, maybe mental health is something we should be taking a look at. We grew up in a world where everything is positive thinking. Oh, turn that frown upside down, and blah, 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 which is all, once again, physical manifestations. Okay, well, if I'm smiling, everything must be great. And I have to admit, because I've always been a pretty positive guy and whatnot. So when I went through that whole phase of being depressed, I was like, I understand now. And even for me, it was just a small window of time. I was like, I get why, if someone's depressed, they can sit there and try to talk themselves out of being depressed all day long, and know that they're not feeling right.
Exactly.
But at the same time, they just don't. You just can't get yourself out of that darkness. And I get it now. And so in that sense, I'm kind of grateful that I went through that experience, because I was always that guy that's like, well, it just slough it off and, and turn it around. And I realized that it's not a switch flip. And, and so people that suffer from a lot of these things chronically, I have far more compassion for now than I probably used to.
Yep.
But that's the thing, is it's a lot easier to just, we are trained to walk it off.
Mm-hmm.
We are trained, you know, from very young age. Oh, you fell? Oh, well, get up. It's not so bad. You know, walk it off. And we do, and we walk it off. And 9 times out of 10, we hit a nerve, and you can walk it off, and everything's fine.
Well, and even generationally, right? Like the reason that I was late was just dealing with issues with my parents who come from a different time where they don't want help from me, or they don't want to admit that they're not going to let their kids help them. Their job was to help me.
Right.
And so there's accepting, admitting that you have the problem, or going to see a doctor, or trusting the doctor that you see, or taking the advice that you get, right? Like, these are all things that we're not by default programmed to be okay with. So.
No, we're sure, and we're proud. I mean, it's all a pride thing, and we're trained with pride, and sometimes we have to be humble. And I'm the worst at it. I'm terrible at it. I won't ask people for help. I think I'm superhuman until that day I wake up and realize I'm not superhuman. You know?
I always thought you were, so I'm happy to hear that you're not.
Well, you know, I get reminded of it every now and then that I'm not superhuman, you know, and then people will say to me, well, maybe you shouldn't go around telling people you're superhuman.
With a shaved head and a black V-neck, you might be a super villain.
Well, you know, I'm kind of, it's the Bizarro universe thing. See, like 2 years ago it was a nice, you know, Santa Claus grandpa looking guy. Now it's the super villain thing. Sure,
I'm waiting for you to grow an evil mustache. There'll be an evil Marc Benzakein.
On the back of your head will be a tattoo of the Fogo.
Yeah.
No, that'd be pretty epic. So before we wrap it up here, I wanted to briefly say that when you gave your presentation at WordCamp US, and you talked about all the transitions that you've gone through, I mean, that was all in the course of a year, right?
Right. Yes.
Just 1 year.
Yeah.
Which is amazing to me.
Yeah. The way that I look at it, because it still feels like it's taking so long for me, because I'm not exactly where I want to be, you know. And so I have to remind myself, it took me, you know, close to 20 years to get where I was. So for me to be a year and a half later where I am right now, that's really not that much time. It's just one took a conscious effort and the other didn't. That's the only difference. But I'm really, you know, it's like much faster to get better than it is to get worse. It's just getting worse. You don't realize it's happening when it's happening.
Right. So, first of all, congrats on your journey thus far. You look great. You sound great. Looks like you're doing really good. And thank you for sharing your words and your journey to all of us at WordCamp US, and people can search for that. What's the name of your presentation that they can look for on WordPress.tv?
It's called Fat, Happy, and 50.
That's right. Yeah. And so there's that presentation. And before we let you go, what words of encouragement can you give to our listeners out there who maybe who haven't arrived at the aha moment, or they have arrived at the aha moment, or maybe just need a little bit of encouragement or motivation to start making the conscious effort to do better?
Probably, I would say there's a couple of things. One, the number one thing I would say is, don't be hard on yourself when you don't get it right the first time around, or when you have that cheat day, or whatever. I think that for me, it was for me to replace the good habit or the bad habit with the good habit was a matter of just making sure that I did the good habit more than the bad habit. And so even now, I still fall into a bad habit of mine, but I don't get hard on myself about it. I'm like, okay, you know, I had one day, and you know what? I enjoyed it. Now it's back at it. So I would definitely say don't beat yourself up. I think that we beat ourselves up way too much. I think we don't realize that failure is a part of success. It's a necessary part of success. any self-respecting developer will tell you that failure is part of success, because nobody fails more in one day than a developer before they actually get that code right. So, so you can either beat yourself up over that code being, you know, ineffective or whatever, or you can just keep getting back at it and not beating yourself up. So it's no different. You're recoding yourself, right? So you're just rewriting that code. The other thing I would say is don't try to do too much too soon. That's why I failed time and time again in my 40s. Pick one thing and focus on that one thing until it becomes a good habit. Remember that it likely did take you several years to get where you are. It's going to take some time to get back, but it won't take anywhere near the time to get back as it took you to get where you are. And reach out to people. You know, there's a bunch of people who want to see you succeed. Whether it's your loved ones or whether it's a community or whatever. If you're feeling a little bit like alone, you're really not. There's always people that want to see you succeed. And if you run into people who don't want to see you succeed, or you feel like they're toxic in your life, get rid of them. Right. We can't always get rid of all the toxicity in our lives, but it's amazing how that impacts how you think about life and how you think about yourself if you're not careful. So, you know, I could go on and on, because these are all things that I've discovered about myself in the last couple of years, or last 20 or 30 years. But you know, just, you know, don't give up. That's a cliche, but don't give up. Just do better. That's what I keep telling people. Just do better.
Just do better. I think it's great words of encouragement there. Well, Marc, thanks a lot for joining us on the show again and sharing some insight about what's going on professionally and personally in your life. And like I said, you look good. You're doing good. And I'm glad to have you around. And by the way, did you ever run that marathon yet? Oh,
I forgot to tell you the rest of the story, which was that back in, I don't know, February or March of last year, my trainer was working me out, and he says, "You still want to run that marathon in July?" I said, "I hate running. Why would I want to run a marathon?" And he looked at me, he says, "Good." He says, "You're not the marathon runner type." He says, "I didn't think." so that was the end of that. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. So, Marc, if people want to follow you, get in touch with you, maybe they want to ask you questions, whether that's, you know, about vegan diet, or just, you know, need a little inspiration or maybe encouragement or advice, how can they get in touch with you?
You can find me on Twitter at Marc, and that's M-A-R-C, Benzak, B-E-N-Z-A-K. I just registered a domain called thejoylessvegan.com. So there may actually be a website coming soon. I don't know. Awesome. We'll see if I have the time to do it. You can also find me at ServerPress. You can find me at WordCamps. I'm going to be speaking at WordCamp Miami. So, John, I think
you're going to be on. In fact, I just read that you're going to be part of their Epic Business Track.
Well, that's news to me. Thanks for telling me.
Well, hey, that's what David Bissett said on Twitter.
Congratulations, Marc.
Well, you know, as long as you use the word epic. So I hope I'm in the epic success business track and not the epic failure business track. But no, in all truthiness, Bissett did reach out to me and tell me that he would be interested in having me speak for that. But yeah, so I'll be at WordCamp Miami. Yeah. I'm trying to get out to Phoenix. It's kind of a scheduling thing for me. And I love the guys at Phoenix, and Phoenix was my first WordCamp that I ever spoke at. So it's kind of near and dear to me. So that was also, until US, it was also the biggest group I ever spoke in front of. So my first one was my biggest. So, well, that's not true. I spoke in Miami, and that was pretty big too. So, but Miami's always fun. I would say if you guys go to any WordCamp in the next couple of months, you got to hit Miami. San Diego is always great, but I have a really soft spot for like all the Florida WordCamps, and Miami is always awesome. It's just a
Me
big,
too.
it's a lot of fun. So that's where I always find you at the airport, John. Is
It is.
the Miami WordCamp. So
Yep.
So I mean, you can find me. Just Google me, you'll find me.
Okie dokie, man. Thanks a lot for being on the show and sharing some of your progress, both professionally and personally. And all the best to you, man. And keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. It's good talking to you guys. Good to see you too.
We got to get you down to East Troy, Marc.
Yeah. Well, are you going to do WordCamp this year, John?
We kicked the idea around. We still have time. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'll let you know. Be happy to have you.
Yeah, it'd be fun. I've actually, like I said, it's the town I drive through, and I see the sign, and I'm like, J-Trip. That's my only association with East Troy. So.
Yeah. Check it out. It's good here. Good coffee, good food. Yeah. Obviously, good people. I'm here, so.
Actually, that's not true. I think that isn't there a paintball place out there, Siege or something? Isn't that in East Troy?
I don't. If it is, I don't know anything about it. So
I took my son for paintball last year.
It might be. It might be in the town.
It's like where there's a Walmart, and then there's like this barn, and
might be McWanago.
Maybe it's McWanago. I don't know.
Siege paintball. This is me Googling live on the air.
Our listeners have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
I know.
Jeff's been saying goodbye for the last 20 minutes.
They're in McWanago, but you're close to us. You're minutes and minutes away. You went right past the Elegant Farmer, the big barn with the smiley face.
Yeah, the Elegant Farmer. Yeah, that's the place that has pie, right?
Oh, the apple pie. Yeah, they were on.
So have to get Marc up to East Troy so we can say hi to Annie Griffith.
Yes, and we got to get Smokey up here so we can have a puppy camp, Jeff. We've been talking about doing a puppy word camp for almost as long as there have been word camps. So
wow, I can't wait to see what those sessions are about. There's the dog bone track and the
sleepless nights from potty training your puppy.
The poopy track and the sounds like fun.
All right, so officially we are saying goodbye to you, Marc. As we have a handful of stories. This is going pretty long in the show. I have to talk about some of the things that's been taking place here in the WordPress community as of late. And let's see. I guess we'll start off with this one. WordPress 4.9.3 was released a few days ago. It was just a maintenance release. Had about 34 bug fixes in it. And then hours later, WordPress 4.9.4 was released to fix a critical auto update bug in 4.9.3. So the bug actually generated a fatal PHP error when WordPress attempted to update itself. And the bug stemmed from an attempt to reduce the number of API calls made when the auto update cron job is run. Unfortunately, the code that was committed had unintended consequences. And what it did is it triggered a fatal error. It's not all of the dependencies of the find core auto update function were met. So what we have now is that if your site's on 4.9.3, you have to manually update it to 4.9.4 in order to receive further updates, security updates automatically from WordPress.org. This is if you're on the 4.9 branch. All other branches are unaffected by this. So good news there. But Dean Hulse, one of the WordPress lead developers, says that a post-mortem will be published after they figure out how this happened and how they can prevent this mistake from happening in the future. And they're going to take steps to increase automated coverage of their updates and improve tools in the aid of detection of similar bugs before they become an issue in the future.
This is one of those situations where, like, Dion stayed awake for longer than a person should to clean up after the mess that he made for himself. I mean, this is like, I woke up and saw the conversation in Slack about what had gone wrong and what needed to be done, and pulling the release and making sure that no future 4.9.3 updates would happen automatically. And so there was just a flurry of activity that that Dion plowed and powered through. And so the things that a person goes through, right? The emotions that happen when you screwed something up, you know how to fix it, you know it's bad and it looks bad and it's going to be bad for like a bunch of reasons, and you have the responsibility to yourself and everyone to just like suffer through it, pick yourself back up, and fix the problem and move on to the next thing. Dion did an incredible job recovering from all of this. And on the list of problems that could go wrong with a release, this one looks worse than it is, because WordPress still works. There's no visible errors, there's no problems, the site isn't broken. All that happens is the auto update doesn't happen on its own. And I like joked, but kind of meant it when we were talking about it, is that the WordPress auto updater is like the only one that ever actually works for me. Like macOS never auto updates. iOS apps never auto update for me. They have not auto updated. I have to open up the App Store and then it's 17 apps need updates. And they came out weeks ago. And so like the WordPress auto updater is the only one that I don't have to push the button on. And so it doesn't even break my heart that I'd have to push it like one time. Like push the button and it still updates just fine. It just won't auto update. And so it's the first time since the auto updater was put into WordPress
3.7.
Yep, that it broke. And so it was within hours, the breakage was figured out. There's a lot of other like kind of like just temporary testing that we can do to make sure that updates are working. Like there are lots of other things that we can do now to make sure that this exact problem doesn't happen again. But because it happens with WP cron, because cron is hard to test anyways, there's just a lot of little bits that need attention now to make sure this doesn't happen again. And this is the best bad way to get attention on a piece of WordPress that has probably needed attention for a long time. So here's so you say with all that said, I'm going to do the read the WP Tavern comment segment of the show, and this is by Jennifer. No.
She says, this is an embarrassing bug for the WordPress core team and shows that they're rushing to get updates out without proper testing. 4.9.3 should never have gone out. And now anyone that was automatically updated has to waste their time manually updating to 4.9.4. Whoever is leading the project now should be removed.
It's, that's it. I was kind of with her until the end there. It is embarrassing. Of course it's embarrassing. Like you trip and fall down in public, you're embarrassed. Like, this is going to be embarrassing. But you pick yourself up. You don't cut their legs off though. Like, this is just a mistake, and it's not great, but it'll be okay. And so we posted some mitigation and auto update ways for hosts to automate this update past 4.9.3, because really the bigger concern is that actual future security updates, like once you're on 4.9.3, unless you hit the button, you're just forever on 4.9.3. So when 4.9.4, 5, 6, 7 come out, if you never hit the button on 4.9.3, you'll never get the next ones. And so it's less about 4.9.3 being broken as much as it's you won't get the good stuff that comes after it. That's really the problem. So,
and by the way, you mentioned, I should say that you can, when I say manually update to 4.9.4, that doesn't mean you could do it by SFTP and upload the files manually. I mean, that's one way. You could just go to the dashboard, visit the update session, and click the update now button. And it's as easy as that for most people. Exactly. Or you could use WP CLI. There's a couple commands you could use there.
Yep.
So upgrading to 4.9.4 shouldn't be a problem for anyone. It's just that you got to do it. You got to go from 4.9.3 to 4.9.4 in order to continue to receive automatic updates in the future.
It's one click of one button instead of 0 clicks.
Right.
It's the best type of bad problem to have.
So with that release, Now we can move on over to WooCommerce 3.3.1 being released. Now, when we were here last week, 3.3 was released, and one of the things we had talked about, because you have experience with this with BuddyPress, was the template compatibility issue. And it turns out that caused some conflicts. It turns out that there's some template conflicts that were being discussed and that were reported by users of a lot of different themes that work in WooCommerce. And the WooCommerce team actually reverted 3.3, which is, that's a big, bold move. And what the team did is they reviewed a handful of the most common themes running WooCommerce, tested them for compatibility with 3.3.1. And once they were confident that many of the template conflicts had been worked out, they released 3.3.1. And they also recommended to developers that theme authors should use hooks instead of template overrides to ensure maximum compatibility. It should also be noted that the storefront theme, which is like the official theme for WooCommerce, was compatible at release. And in addition to the template fixes, 3.3.1 also has at least 90 commits, so there's probably other bug fixes in there as well. And according to Mike Jolly, one of the WooCommerce lead developers, this release highlighted issues with the template system's extensibility and a disconnect between theme authors on external marketplaces, which he hopes to find solutions for in the near future. So that's what's going on with WooCommerce. And
theme compatibility
overrides, huh? What do you know about that?
Oh, man, it's a tough. Going through and learning and building the theme compatibility that ended up in BuddyPress and BBPress was a trip down memory lane for how WordPress does all of the decision making for which template it needs to pull and why, and then just how different we write code today, how separate we want these things to be. And so WooCommerce is a complex application. Theme compatibility is going to be hard. And I know in the original version that shipped with Jiggle Shop was kind of based on what I had wrote for the BBs years ago. But I have no doubt that a team of bigger, newer, smarter, younger contributors is 7 years later now, ran into some of the exact same problems plus different ones. So good on them for figuring this out and solving this problem. It's like we talked about with Marc earlier. It sucks a little bit that plugins have to take so much responsibility and write so much code to solve this problem. Just like WordPress should do with database tables and schemas and things, WordPress should have more easier, simpler, and more straightforward ways to customize the things that plugins want to do. It's still kind of a raw deal that we're at a point where a plugin has to reinvent all this stuff and introduce its own bugs. These bugs should be WordPress bugs. They shouldn't be plugin bugs.
Now, speaking of what WordPress should and shouldn't do, you are on the WordPress security team, so you can comment on this on your own opinion and whatnot. But there's a news story making the rounds this week about an unpatched denial of service flaw, which is advertised that it could help anyone take down a WordPress website. It's got a CVE attached to it. And according to this report, it was discovered by an Israeli security researcher, Barak Willi. That's probably not how you say his name, but it resides in the load scripts.php, which is a built-in script in WordPress, which processes user-defined request. And apparently what you can do is you can load this thing up and request all these different scripts, which is without having to be authenticated or an authenticated user, and potentially, depending on what type of server hardware your site is on, you could cause a denial of service issue. Now, according to this developer in this article, they say that the WordPress team, or whoever this WordPress person was that they talked to, acknowledged that it is not a WordPress issue. It is a server issue and should be taken care of at the server level. And of course, what is the commentary that's going on now is that WordPress is ignoring this, that it's a WordPress issue. WordPress should take care of it.
Mhm.
John, your thoughts?
Okay, so let it be very clear that my thoughts are my own
Represent J-Trip and no
thoughts,
one else.
and do not in any way, shape, or form represent those thoughts of the official
I love it when you do a
WordPress
disclaimer.
security
I know it's going to be
team
good.
or any individual or anybody else. And so this is a fun issue because there are two sides to every story, and everyone is going to feel how they feel, and then everyone is free to deliver the narrative that they want to deliver. And so looking at this report, which I have looked at but did not reply to, the basis is correct. This is kind of a known WordPress issue that has been this way for a long time, that has had public track tickets. So this is not a private issue so much as even other similar DOS style bugs with trackbacks and pingbacks, or it's along the same lines of like, if someone chooses to abuse this feature, it is kind of abusable, but hosts have mitigated that over and over and time again. So Automatic has a plugin that I forked because I needed a different little nuanced version of it to help cache these concatenated requests. The bug in general is that WordPress has a PHP way of enqueuing all your style sheets in JavaScript, and it is designed to make it easy. It says load all the scripts or load all the styles. You pass in what the registered keys are. I want tiny MCE styles. I want WP admin styles. I want this JavaScript, that JavaScript, whatever. And so there are some big files there that are dozens or more of kilobytes, and you can enqueue a bunch of them at a time. So you can sometimes craft 2 or 3, 4 megabyte size requests that get dumped to the page as style sheets or as JavaScript. Caching those effectively mitigates all of the work. PHP doesn't do any of the work. None of that gets repeated again. It's just cached. But on hosts and on servers and in configurations where those requests aren't cached, or where someone is choosing to finely craft and pick huge amounts of assets to try and make that thing be as big as possible, then it's going to be a problem. It's kind of not much different than having comments turned on and then just overloading the comment form with the maximum number of characters, 60,000, whatever it is. If you do that, and you do it a bunch of times in a row, and you don't have Akismet turned on, someone could DOS your site with just comments turned on. These are kind of known issues, but if what you want is this thing to work this way, that's the way it works. And so, long story short, is the way it is today with load scripts and load styles is kind of the best convenience, like the best balance of convenience and functionality. And it doesn't mean that it won't be different tomorrow, or that we haven't thought of or considered other alternatives to this. But like Automatic's plugin or my plugin, maybe we do look at caching this JavaScript or the CSS. Anything like W3 Total Cache on to any other caching plugin, CDN, there are lots of other ways to solve this problem in WordPress, but your average WordPress install could see some issues with this. So
is this something users should be concerned with and should be waiting for the WordPress team to patch?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I honestly don't think so. The fixes that would the thing that makes it tricky and why caching plugins are better solutions to solve this problem than I think WordPress core is that there are a million plugins and themes that have their own way of enqueuing and doing things with CSS and with JavaScript. And WordPress does a good job of making sure that all those things happen in a predictable way. But when it comes to this page loads some WooCommerce stuff, this page loads some BBPress stuff, this other page loads some Jetpack stuff, and some form builder stuff, and so on. And there's Ninja Forms. Every page is different. That means that every page is going to enqueue a bunch of different CSS and JavaScript. They need to be cached differently, or there needs to be an engine that decides how do these things get cached and how do you invalidate those caches. And I don't think that it makes sense for those decisions to be made inside of WordPress. I might change my answer tomorrow, but I think today caching plugins or a hosting provider that caches or puts these in a CDN for you is the best solution to this exact problem.
Okay, so with all that said, there is the researcher released a bash script. Other people have suggested mod rewrite rules to address this.
Rewrite rules, or limiting the size of the GET request, or there's lots of other ways you can do it. I was going to mention this, and since you bring it up, I'll mention it again. I'll mention it when I meant to. I don't mean to interrupt, but the solutions that are in the posts that you're talking about on the hackernews.com, they're not, and I'm not trying to be critical, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. They are not the solutions that I would recommend that anybody take. Running a bash script assumes that you have a certain level of competency and comfortability with your WordPress site that most people won't have. And all that it's doing is just kicking on a constant, turning off concatenate scripts. It's just editing the file, hacking core, which means it will go away when you update core or when core auto updates itself. So don't run the script. And the other solution, which is maybe just a sign of the times or something that I'm just too old to be comfortable with, but recommends running his own fork of WordPress that has this problem theoretically solved. And so I'm not comfortable switching my WordPress site to run anyone else's version of WordPress other than the official branch that comes from WordPress core itself. And so it's risky business, I think, riskier than having that be exposed in the load scripts and styles files is switching to somebody else's branch. That is you just don't, the origin of it is questionable, whereas the official branch is not. So
yeah, how'd you like to get some unintended consequence auto updates from that branch? You know?
and so I have a hard time, I don't want to discredit the person or the report, because that's not the point. It's a valid situation. It's a valid condition. Security researchers are all brilliant. They do a great job. They live in a completely different type of the web and world than we live in. It's a tough job. And so I don't want to have this be like a witch hunt against the reporter, because that's not fair or right. But I wouldn't solve this problem these ways, and it makes it's a good example of what makes security research and working on a piece of software like WordPress really complicated, because someone can be 100% right, but you still have to, say that it's a non-issue, or it's not as important as maybe
the nature of security stuff.
Yeah,
the nature
right.
of security issues. So Jetpack just released 5.8, but we'll get into that next week. I think next week we'll have an episode where we'll catch up on some things. There's a couple discussions I'd like to dive into next week, and we'll have plenty of time to do that. And the early feedback is, A, make Smokey a friend of the show, which I think we can easily do, and B, make Smokey a permanent co-host. So
I will gladly accept my demotion for a cuter, softer co-host. So unless they're saying
it's going to be
two
Jeff, J Trip, and Smokey show.
It's like Ed McMahon and what was the trumpet guy from Johnny Carson? He had two co-hosts technically, right? Like,
well, it's like David Letterman in the Ball Guy.
Paul Schaefer, yeah,
Paul Schaefer.
Conan O'Brien had Andy Richter, and Max was the drummer for Springsteen. What's his name? I don't remember his name either. I think you having two co-hosts is viable. The one would be cute, and then one would talk forever. So you have like lots of bases covered.
There you go. We got all the bases covered. So that's going to do it for this extremely long episode of WordPress Weekly. You can find show notes for this episode and all other episodes on wptavern.com. And you can follow me on Twitter and see pictures of Smokey at JEFFR0. And John?
At JJJ on Twitter and GitHub, and jjj.blog.
Excellent. So until next week, everybody, we'll talk to you again next Wednesday afternoon. Take care. So long. Stay safe. Talk to you next week. Say bye, John.
Bye, Smokey. Bye, Smokey. Bye.